YouTube, that lovely time of year has come and gone, but who says you need a special day to think about that special someone? Even if that person doesn't exist, sometimes you want to indulge yourself in that feeling of romance. As someone who's been romantically alone for at least over 10 years now, I know how it feels, so instead of living out my own love story, I just live vicariously through fictional characters, and I choose to adore myself in various other and more healthy ways. So, even if it isn't that special time of year, but you're yearning for that heart-thumping feeling, I have some romance recommendations that I think anyone can enjoy. I say romance, but at the end of the day, it all boils down to rom-coms, and oh boy do I enjoy a lot of those. They kinda slide into that slice of life feeling, but they also have a keen focus and goal in mind. I also have to admit that they're kinda plain if you think about it. Most of the BLs I like have a T at the end of them, and I don't go out of my way to pick lilies. So if you have your own recommendations, be sure to leave them in the comments section below. A quick rundown on this video's legend, because man, I haven't made one of these in a long time. Ugh, I chose the most annoying way to get back. So as per our example, we have the book's Japanese name. The parentheses are the book's translated name. If it's in brackets, that means that it's that book's license name. If there's an asterisk, that means that that book has an anime. And if there's a star, that means that story is completely translated in English. What that translation is, however, is varied, as demonstrated by the parentheses are the brackets. Obviously, all of these stories I present to you today have an English translation of some kind, and none of these symbols are mutually exclusive because even officially licensed works and publications can be half-assed. Bitterness aside, this way you have more choices when you search for them. Maybe you're the type of person that likes to enjoy the anime before you jump into a manga, and I have some picks for you for that, but none of these have a completed anime. Don't even go in thinking that. Maybe you want to support the author and artist, then Bookwalker is generally where you want to be. Hashtag not an ad. Maybe you want to find these in a different forum, because, you know, they're not being licensed at all. God forbid. Maybe you can find a good dex of information on manga somewhere. I wanted to bring up one more thing about this video. There's no lame ambiguity or watch as this person deals with the feeling of love. The theme of this video is mostly about two people who have to deal with their feelings towards one another. So we're kicking things off with one of my all-time favorites, Bokura wa minna kawaii so, The Kawaii Complex Guide to Manners and Hostile Behavior by Miyahara Ruri. You guys remember when Crunchyroll did manga? I'm not really going to speak out about other licensings, it's just, that was a time where I was really frustrated. And they just proved my frustrations right. Anyway, there was no way they were going to make that pun work with that name, so they just went with a completely other one, and you know what, I can't blame them for it. This is the story about a boy named Usa who wants to enjoy his high school life to the fullest, gain a bit of independence, and maybe a girlfriend while he's at it. Taking a chance to live by himself, he stays in town after his parents move to a job transfer, and he moves into a living complex. He starts running into problems before he can even set foot in the place, but a cute and recognizable face is more than enough to get him to stay. The only problem is that Ritsu is an antisocial bookworm who'd rather spend her time in the company of a good book than another person. This is a cute rom-com that focuses on cohabitation with a colorful supporting cast that backs its story. Usa is your average high school boy trademark, but because he has to be the straight man in a story full of jokesters, the fact that he has common sense really makes him stand out from the rest, especially the others that you'll see later on in this list. The fact that he has a name in the story wants you to remember it makes him stand out from the rest. Ritsu, however, is a girl who'd rather not deal with people, let alone romance, so a lot of the story is trying to understand her as a person. But she's not really some super eccentric, she's just a normal introverted girl that gets tired from social situations, so it's a story about a chase more than any other on this list, but it's not desperate enough to feel creepy. The fact that they live together smooths things along by itself. In terms of the romance, I'd say the thing that I most enjoy is that even with how different these two are, they tend to marry each other during every arc. It's not just the romance, but both of them trying to understand one another and how both grow from trying to get close to each other. But the thing that I honestly enjoy the most of this story is the snappy dialogue that you can get from every character that's involved. It doesn't hold itself back from tearing into its characters, and well, that's just because they can all be quite pitiful. Next up is something that's gained recent popularity. Sono Bisuke Doru wa Koi wo Suru, My Dress-Up Darling by Fukuda Shinichi. It's always nice to see a manga that you've seen in your peripherals blow up with an anime release. I wonder what caught my attention the first time. But after actually reading it this time, it's a story about a boy, Gojo Wakana. He loves making dolls and has social anxiety. He had this issue since he was younger, and it turned into a bit of a complex about his hobby, but when the social butterfly Kitagawa Marin finds out about it, instead of finding it creepy like he expected, she praises his craft work. Hearing that he also works with clothing, Kitagawa shows off her hobby, which isn't seen quite as normal as well. She loves to cosplay, but isn't that good at making costumes. She begs Gojo to make her a costume, and him being a bit inspired by her earlier, decides to do her this favor. If our last story was between a natural introvert and a trademark normal boy, this story is actually about a super introvert and a super extrovert coming together. This also feeds into one of the main themes of this story, that is to not judge people based on what they look or like. However, these two pretty much hit it off right off the bat. Gojo has the normal sightline of a high school boy and clearly admires the girl, but the romance mostly falls on the shoulders of Kitagawa, and girls in love is always refreshing. Either way, I can definitely see what people like about this. Some cute sexy cosplay, some ideals of being true to yourself, and two cute characters who seem to be falling for each other. Minna Kawaii So is a little raunchy with its jokes, and Dress Up Darling has its large fill of fan service, so let's pick something a little more innocent and cute. Suru Suru to Zara Zara no Aida, Between Smooth and Rough by Tsukiko. Tamaki is a middle school boy whose family owns a pet shop that focuses on amphibians and reptiles. He goes to an all-boys school, and his only real chance to interact with girls is during their school festival, but even then he wouldn't go out of his way to do so. That's why it's up to our heroine, Saya, to kick things off herself. Very forward and very honest about her feelings, Tamaki doesn't know what to do, so they decide to start off as friends. Don't get used to this, but I'm going to tell you straight out that this isn't a will they won't they story. These two get together fairly quickly, and it's just a story of their romance. It's very simple and it's very cute, and I think that's its strongest point. I think it does a really good job at expressing both of the characters' feelings, internally and externally, most of the time using reptiles for metaphors for both of them, and also showing off their personalities and their insecurities. The way they get closer to one another and the way they communicate with each other is refreshing. Even though Tamaki's family owns a pet shop, he's not good with reptiles at all, but Saya loves them, and that's not a problem. In fact, if he wasn't where he was, she probably wouldn't have known about him in the first place. But they accept each other for who they are and how they feel, and they still manage to get closer. With all of those things combined, this has been a favorite of mine for a long time. Alright, that intro and all those recommendations should have taken up a couple of minutes at least. So this time, let's run with a theme, but I can't really pick one. Maybe it should be more a series where we explore characters with the romantic maturity of actual 10-year-olds. But this time, more for the sake of comedy, or some extreme fetish. Or maybe I'm just teasing you. Either way, we're keeping things cute with Karakai Jozu no Takagi-san, Teasing Master Takagi-san, by Yamamoto Soichiro. Middle school is pretty simple. Go to class, you hang out after school, you tease your classmates. If only Nishikata wasn't up against Takagi. No matter what plans he makes, she always seems to be one step ahead. This is a story of a boy who can't win a teasing match and can't take a hint at a girl's obvious feelings. But this is the type of easygoing rom-com this story is. A girl constantly pulling one over on the boy that she likes, most of the time with a romantic tinge to it all. Stories like these put the comedy in rom-com because it's just a one-trick pony that is constantly changing up its one trick, and that's all it needs to be. A bite-sized rom-com you'd enjoy a handful at a time and once a week after that. But if you do want more, there is Karakai Jozu no Motto Takagi-san, Teasing Master Former Takagi-san, by Inaba Mifumi and Yamamoto Soichiro. In this series, the two leads are married and it's a bunch of stories focused on them interacting with their preschool daughter. Just adding her alone adds a fantastic new dynamic to these two, even if mom is still the master. But enough cute stuff. I'm sure there's more extreme forms of teasing that you want. Don't you want to feel like less of a person? Feel utterly humiliated? Don't you want to cry? No? Too bad. Ijiranai de Nagatoro-san. Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro by Nanashi774. I set them both because they're both on the cover and I didn't know how to... A story about a senpai and his kohai who both have problems expressing themselves together. If our last series was cute, this one is horny. A lot can be said for writers who wear their fetishes on their skin, which is all of them, but more extreme ones tend to stand out. I don't want to boil this series down into its most shallow elements, but I don't even want to say it takes a while for it to change and mellow out, it just starts off really strong. Nagatoro mellows out and Wimpy Senpai gains a bit of a backbone from hanging out with each other, and later on their dynamic can be considered cute, it's just kind of annoying, at least earlier on. Though I've never seen a story so meticulously dunk on itself in its first chapter than this one, calling out authors who are nothing like their self-insert characters to an MC who barely has a name. The fetish fits. But on to something more wholesome. Yanchan Garu no Anjo-san, The Mischievous Gal Anjo-san by Kato Yuichi. As sexy as Nagatoro-san, just as cute as Takagi-san, we get another school setting of dorky boy Seto being aggressively hit on by Gyaru Anjo-san. So what makes this one any different? Not much. Just the combination of tone from these previous two mentions is what holds it up. Seto is kind of a dork, but he isn't as bad as Senpai, but he's not as much as a normal boy as Nishikata. Anjo doesn't outsmart Seto, and is pretty aggressive, but isn't as spiteful as Nagatoro. And that pretty much is its hook. The fact that it isn't relying on its gimmick as much as those other two means that it lets its characters breathe more and adapt to different situations more dynamically. Out of everything that I've mentioned, this is the best example of opposites attract the manga that I've got. I mean, it's still your basic rom-com, but it manages to get moving a bit more quickly than the last two recommendations that I picked. Alright, I've said school way too many times, we gotta bump things up. Let's get a bit more adult and a bit more lovey-dovey, if you will. Haikei, Kuroshiya-san to kekkon shimashita. My lovey-dovey wife is a stone-cold killer by Kosaka Donten. We have a story about a newlywed couple where the wife, Setsuna, is an assassin. The story starts with the words, "I got married on a whim," so the overall relationship is somewhat fresh, which isn't that uncommon in Japanese society, but even so, they do their best to get closer to one another. The appeal point is Setsuna's assassin quirks showing up in normal everyday life, but what I really like the most is the husband dealing with who she knows from that part of her life. You mostly meet the family, but that assassin twist when her sister shows up or they go and meet her father again. It's really fun to see the different characters you run into while slowly finding out how these two even met in the first place. Next up is Asoko de Hataraku Musubu-san, Musubu, the girl working there, by Mori Taishi. Sagami Goro is a sales worker in a company that makes rubber products and gets transferred into a new integrated department. It's this move that lets him work closer with his crush Kondo Musubu. Kondo Musubu. However, her R&D department works on condoms. This is an office-based rom-com that rides the line between normal work conversations and casual sexual harassment. I'm kidding. Most of the time. That joke's brought up a lot. It's funny every time they do it, I promise. Working on condoms is our special backdrop and prop, but it's a romance between an easily excitable guy and a taciturn girl who might be a little too much into her job. Going back through and reading some of the comments, it's kinda cringy how much they throw that word cringe around. It's as if they aren't self-aware enough to figure out how panicked and anxious people can get around someone that they like and how it's played up for the sake of a joke. And the kicker is that Tsugami really thinks through his feelings a lot of the time, and is very caring and careful with his actions, even if his thoughts run wild from time to time. As for Musubu, she's a pretty fun character who has to try and understand what it means to like someone for the first time in her life. It's a very cute and honest take on a relationship that's very refreshing. But continuing the theme of honesty, this is a current favorite of mine I ran into, and because I can't have nice things, it's already over in Japanese. Honki daseba, omae koroseru. If I get serious, I can kill you. By Yaneura Sisko. Kurahashi Sakurako is an 18-year-old college student who belongs to a high-standing and proper family. She may be well behaved on the outside, but on the inside, she has a killer body and a killer attitude to match. She's a girl who's tired of the expectations of her family and the world around her, and turns all of that stress into muscle training. Once again forced on another date with a potential suitor, she plans to put on her best good girl act and tries to contain herself. However, it is through an accident that the suitor, Toru, notices Sakurako's true self, and he decides to also be honest with his feelings. Now that these two have laid their hearts bare to one another, can love bloom? Not in chapter 1 it can, because we're still reading rom-coms, but it's a fun premise for this series. What I enjoy most about this series is the fact that Sakurako isn't just worried about being seen as a girl or a high-class lady, but as a person in general. She likes to work out, get her nails done, dress up nicely, all for herself. This theme also expresses itself for other characters she meets in the series as well, and she learns things from all of them, because even for how sure she is in herself, she's afraid to show it because her mother denies it so strongly. This story is from Sakurako's perspective, so in that point, it's the most interesting from all the other picks of this video. But I have to say that this hits my strike zone the hardest out of all of them. Wish I had a buff, independent woman who liked me. But alas, it's time to end this with my current running big favorite. Ponkotsu fukin to tsukato take ga futekisetsu na JK no hanashi. The story between a dumb prefect and a high school girl with an inappropriate skirt length by Yokota Takuma. Kohinata Poemu is a girl who likes to dress however she wants, which honestly isn't too bad, but prefect Sakura Daimon Togo has words to share with her about her skirt length. Another high school based rom-com, so what's the twist this time? Nothing. Well, other than our male lead being rock stupid, but I mean, that's nothing new. But no, he's seriously dumb in almost every sense of the word. Rom-coms are one of the most character-driven genres out there, and I think that's what sparks people's interest the most. Whether it's the trashiest, raunchiest stories about people who should never be in a relationship in the first place, to the most sickeningly sweet, pure, diabetes-inducing romances. While I think it definitely leads more into the sweet side, it fits pretty well in the middle overall, and I think that's its strength. Yokota Takuma excels at writing about adolescence, or at least that's what they enjoy the most, clearly. It's pretty much in everything that they've worked on, but it stands out the most in their solo works, and each one just so happens to bring in a new backdrop. This one, however, doesn't really have that. Writing about adolescence would for the most part mean also writing about teenagers and how they deal with love and romance, and it's hinted at in most of their works, but for this one, that is its main focus, and it doesn't shy away from it. Really meeting a person for the first time, getting to know them better, and gaining emotions for them, and whatever comes afterwards as well. The good, the bad, awkward, unsure, and the lovely. It also helps that it isn't a slouch in terms of comedy. Poemu and Togo's relationship is more like a comedy act, but that doesn't get in the way of the romance that those two share. Togo's straightforward personality that lets him say whatever is on his mind is a perfect match for Poemu's tsundere nature. She finally makes me get their appeal, and it might be because the overall tone and violence is very exaggerated. This is a story where this gremlin of a creature can transform into a hunk when surrounded by books, and the student body president beat down 50 thugs by herself. Our supporting cast is also fun and fill out all of the other box standard cliches you'd find in other rom-coms as the jokes that they are. Childhood friends where one is super dense not only to the other person's feelings but their own as well? Check. Love rival coming out of nowhere to make a love triangle? Check. Extras expressing that pairing the spares is dumb and cliche? Whoa, hold on, wait a minute, that's something I believe in. It's this and Mina Kawaii So that I think has the most to offer in terms of romance and comedy, but most are just being well told overall because at their core, they're just stories about kids who are going through life and they just so happen to like each other. Man, I realized how hard it is to write for a theme in an overall video because, you know, at the end of the day, everything sounds the same and I have to do my best to make them sound different. And my start and bookends are, you know, so like, what do you really like about them? Well, you know, they're really funny and I think the romance is nice and the characters are dynamic. It's like, oh, can we believe you? Yes, please, I promise. It's so hard to talk about without really getting into them, but, you know, this is a nice test for myself. But what do you guys like in a romance? Do you like funny ha-has? Do you like big dramatic love confessions? Do you like it when people cheat on each other? I don't know. I don't like that, but whatever. At the end of the day, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you leave a comment, subscribe. Honestly, leave a recommendation, without a doubt. Let me know what you like. So, until we meet again, mata aho. Until we meet again.